In the firearms collecting business, you'll hear a lot about the year 1964, but mostly it's used as in pre-1964. It was during a time when manufacturers, especially Winchester, went ahead and looked at how they could lower the cost of producing their firearms. Because up until pre-64, 1964, a lot of firearms were made by hand and hand fitted. And of course, that absolutely is the best way by a skilled craftsman. But the problem is people were looking for lesser and less expensive guns. And so you hear a lot of negative. But today I'm going to bring you a little bit of positive about the year 1964. That's when Ruger came out with the 1022. This is considered to be an extremely dependable gun. This particular version is from 1968. And when I found it in a gun store, I was, first of all, I passed on it. I walked by, I picked out some other guns that I liked that were right next to it. And I went, I'm not interested in that. It's a new one. Well, yes and no. On careful examination before I actually made my final purchase, I started looking at this and it was pointed out to me that it was an earlier version of the famous 1022. Another thing I noticed about it, which is hard to overlook on a close examination, is the stock. The stock is walnut. It's something that I don't even know if you can get a Ruger 1022 today in a walnut stock. They stopped it because of the price. They made them in birch for a while, and now, of course, what are they? Palomar or whatever you call it, it's plastic. When I pick up a plastic gun, I have to be honest with you, there's a negative side to it. Now, I do have one right over here. This is a gun that I think a great deal of. This is a Benelli M4. Wouldn't technically fit the channel, but on the first episode, I believe I made some mention to if a gun was made that filled the gap that no other gun that was old could do, there would be this one. Now, John Browning came pretty close to this, to be honest with you, but there were some military guns like this, and I have one, and I'll be reviewing that on the channel soon. Phenomenal gun. So yeah, this is a gun that fits a void to a large degree. I mean, John Browning came close, and his design was 100 years, over 100 years before this gun was made. But let's go back to the Ruger. The Ruger is interesting. After I noticed the walnut stock, I also noticed something else that was kind of interesting, and I was kind of aware of it in the distant of my mind. I was thinking about it. It had a clip that went in that was a rotary clip. Now, what's interesting about this, of course, is as in any clip, you can change them, you can have multiples of them, you can snap them in. This is of a rotary design that seems to work fairly well. I have, upon getting this home, I took it out, put a few rounds in the clip. It seemed reluctant to take them because these guns, the ones I purchased, were all apparently sold to the shop from one person. And I think they had sat around from about this period in time. So it was hard to get the shells in there. So I fired off a few, and then I went and put a few more in. Everything seemed to work. This morning, what I did was I lubed it up a bit. So, and then they went in much easier. So I think that's what we'll do. I'm not going to put the clip in the moment because we're in the house, and I don't, unless if it's for a defensive gun, I never load a weapon in the house. Okay? So basically you have a cross safety. It's before the trigger in this case. It's set up with open sights, but also you can have a scope on it. This is reminiscent of old John Browning or any design from the 1800s. They all had the back here. It appears to be metal. The edges are sharper than I would have preferred. It's when you left that handmade production. That's what you have. You just have a mass-produced gun. Does that mean it's an evil gun? No, not necessarily. But you lose some of the finesse and some of the touch and the wonderful feeling of a vintage firearm. Let's see what it says on it. It says it has a serial number, which is 6-digit, starting with a 1. It says Ruger, of course, model 1022 carbine, 22 LR caliber. So I have a couple of Rugers. Obviously, they're not old guns. I have an over-under. One day I was walking through a shop and I saw a Ruger over-under from the late 90s. And I thought, you know, at that time, I didn't have an over-under, so I bought it. And I fired a few shots through it, but that's it. It seemed a little clunky to me, to be honest. Someday I'll do a review on it, and then maybe I'll do a review against another kind of over and under, which is of a different quality level. But does that mean that Ruger is not noteworthy? It is not a good gun? No. Ruger's a great gun, especially when you factor in a gun like this that is dependable. I mean, let's think about this. This gun started production 60 years ago this year. And I have not heard anything negative about them. You know, and semi-automatics, I would say, with the exception of John Browning, previous to about this period in time, were complicated to the point where they weren't really as dependable as I would personally like them. Jamming is the most common thing, but you know, you can have all kinds of problems. But this one here, its reputation and my limited experience with it would suggest that it's a very dependable gun. Shall we take her outside and see just what we've got? And then we'll come back in and talk about the final analysis of my simple analysis of my experience with this gun. Again, I am not a professional gunsmith. I am not a professional retailer. I am just a guy who loves guns, and I'm doing this little series, and I hope you'll follow me along and find it interesting at some point, at least interesting enough to watch it on an occasion. Let's step outside. Let's go shoot this gun and see what we've got to offer, okay? Thank you so much, and we're gonna have a great time out there. Well, I am anyways. Okay, let's go. Okay, so now we're back out. I'm gonna throw in the loaded clip, which I had preloaded, because that's when I was lubricating it up earlier. That goes in, snaps in very good. I don't know if you can see the lighting out here a little bit better. You see if our safety is on, so I can maybe spend a moment or two and show you the nice stock from 1968. You know, if you find a gun like this in a gun store, you might just do okay. It just depends on whether that gun store or not values antique firearms or vintage firearms in this case. It has a couple of little tiny flaws in it, but nothing more than that. So, considering, how old it is, I would say I'm very much impressed with the condition. Let's chamber the first round. Up here it also says Storm Ruger and Company Incorporated, Southport, Connecticut. Cool. I don't think there's anything else written on it other than Ruger in the bottom. Okay, so we're going to chamber one. Safety is still on. It's funny, this just flipped that down with my fingers. I guess that's for when you put the scope on, you can flip that down. Didn't notice that before. See? Sometimes people have to take them off. Just flips down like that. Or flips back up. So you can mount your scope, flip that down, then you take your scope off, flip it up. Okay, so, I guess you're not going to see anything from here. So let me go ahead, I'm going to set this over here, and let me go ahead and, safety still on. I'm going to take you guys down to where you guys can see good. Okay. Okay, so it wasn't bad. It was about 50, 60 feet. I think I could have done better, but there seemed to be, from looking at the target very quickly as I picked up you guys, it looked to me that the gun is sighted to the right and high. There is a range there. That's me, most likely. I don't know, maybe not. But I'm looking at these sights. The front one does not seem movable. I believe the back one may be. But in any case, I think this would be a prime example. I'm definitely in a future video going to put a scope on this. We'll knock down that little puppy. Put a scope on it. And then here's a clip. Go ahead and see what we got. So anyways, 1964. This variant is 1968. I think it's a really good gun. This gun had sat around for a number of years before my purchase of it. It was in a group, and I would say that this gun had sat for at least 40 years. Indications on this gun and the other guns would indicate that. And this gun, with the exception of lubricating the clip and its rotary design, it worked without doing that, but not well. After doing that, it worked flawless. Okay? Until next time, let's go ahead and put a clip, let's go ahead and put a scope on this. I don't know exactly when I'll get to that, but it'll be coming up. And then we'll go ahead and figure out just how good it is. We'll table mount it, and we'll go from a range of about 75 feet because that's what's convenient for me. And we'll take it from there. Until tomorrow, I hope you've enjoyed what I've had to offer here today. Thank you much for joining along with me. And I have no idea what I'm going to bring you tomorrow. I'm going to have to sit down and think about that. But I'll just probably go looking through some of my guns, pick one out. I'm into the off stuff now, you know, not the heavy duty stuff. Hoping the channel gets a little bit bigger before I get into that. But we're doing a lot of the interesting small 22 stuff, things like that. Hey, maybe shotguns. Maybe I'll pick up another shotgun. You know, I've got that 20 gauge Canadian, really well made single barrel. Don't overlook the single barrels. They're too much fun. I got into them by a real fluke years ago, and I just love them. My first one was a single barrel trap, and I've got that on the thing, that, you know, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a high-end gun. Some of these Canadian Winchesters, at least the one I was very pleased with, and this, that was, I think, the 410, wasn't it? And now I'm going to have a 20. 20 is probably one of my favorite gauge sizes because the ammo is so cheap. You got to love that, and you can accomplish everything you want. Even that 410, remember that kicked the can way out? It did a pretty good job. I wouldn't want to be touched with that. Hey, take it easy. I'll see you tomorrow, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.